Are you a fan of bone-chilling tales and spine-tingling suspense? Do you long for the days when horror zines ruled the night, delivering terror and thrills with every page? Then you need to check out Worms Horror Zine. Worms Horror Zine is your ticket to a time when horror was raw, gritty, and downright terrifying. This throwback to the classic horror zines of the 70s and 80s is packed with original horror fiction that will keep you up all night. But that's not all. Inside each issue, you'll find chilling articles, devilish games, mind-bending puzzles, and so much more. Each page is a journey into the unknown, crafted by writers and artists who live and breathe horror. Whether you're a longtime horror fan or just discovering the genre, Worms Horror Zine is your ultimate companion for all things creepy and crawly. And guess what? Worms Horror Zine is proud to sponsor the Right Brain Cafe podcast. So, while you're feeding your creative spirit with this podcast, why not feed your darker side with Worms Horror Zine? Visit bookwormshorror.etsy.com and get your worms today. Unleash your inner horror fanatic with Worms Horror Zine, if you dare.
All right, welcome to the Right Brain Cafe podcast. This is where Regina and I talk about creativity and the reality of it. We are two working artists. We tackle everyday challenges of making art in this world. Each episode is filled with personal insights, experiences that speak to the needs of artists everywhere. So it doesn't matter if you're in your studio or the classroom, you're at the wheel spinning some clay, like the Ghost movie. So you could be writing, you could be at the easel painting, behind the camera taking pictures. This podcast explores the journey of pursuing that passion. So it's about taking charge of your future, having that free will, and don't feel like, oh, I'm either predestined for this or I'm not. You have the control over where you're going with your creativity. So if you listen to this podcast on whatever app you use, see if you can leave us a review. That would really help the show. And you can find us on Instagram at Worms Horror Zine. Today we're going to talk about, Regina, how do you want to phrase this? This is your idea you came up with.
Oh, I wanted to phrase it. Now you put me on the spot.
Yep.
Artists, I wouldn't say it's exactly crossover artists, but artists who do other types of art.
Like
so
side projects,
musicians who paint, writers who act, and so on and so forth.
And there's a lot of examples of this, but why do you think that is important?
I think it's important because I think it helps with creativity in general. And I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But I did have one announcement coming out in August 1st, but you can pre-order it now, is Criminali presents Garbology, the Garb August anthology of awesome trash. It's on Kindle, and it will be available for print, too, by August 1st. And it's an anthology put together different... I have a story in it, which is why I'm pushing it, but it's also great. Criminali has Ollie Clark has an incredible YouTube channel, and it's devoted to horror, fiction, and trashy books, the kind of stuff we love, pulp fiction. And he has another editor called Troy Tradup. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name right, but anyway, it's an anthology of short stories. It has an awesome cover, and we'll put it in the show notes so you can check it out. But it's 34 writers, 10 artists, 5 countries, 3 continents, crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. So I have a story in this, and I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, I'll probably pick up the print version because I don't like Kindle.
I'm sorry.
Explain the genre again of this garbology.
It's like pulp fiction, crime, pulp, and horror.
Yeah, pulp fiction, not necessarily the movie. We're talking about pulp fiction. Yeah.
Before the movie, there was actually something called Pulp Fiction.
Yep.
And from that, the pages were made of paper pulp.
Yeah, I just been reading about that. I have a book called the comic book history of comics. So it's like the book is actually a graphic novel, but it's the history of it. And it starts talking about how they made everything out of pulp and it made it so much cheaper. And
Yeah.
the other thing that is interesting about it, because we kind of do this with bookworms, is that they printed this stuff. Now this is not our thinking, but it makes me think about bookworms. When they printed this stuff, it was made basically to be thrown out when you were done with it,
Yeah.
And I don't think people are throwing out bookworms. I hope not.
No, I hope
That would
not.
make me cry. But we have such a limited amount and they're only printed. And it's like today, if you try to find one of these pulp fiction things from the past, the prices are ridiculous because they weren't meant to be around. And I think
No. Yeah. And if you like, unfortunately, this guy closed his store, but there was this great little Pulp Fiction used bookstore in Burlington. Did you ever go there, James?
I don't think so.
He had, Joe and I found some treasures there, but he had mostly pulp, old sci-fi books. But a lot of those books, like I have quite a few, when you open them up now, they just completely disintegrate because of the type of glue they used on the spine. Just it must be some kind of like an organic glue.
My grandfather had a bunch of Life magazines, and when he passed away, I ended up with them. And all these Life and Look magazines. Actually, I wanted to give you some, because they're in pieces now, just because of what you just said. Like,
okay, yeah,
they like you open them up and they feel like the paper's. It's not as bad as pulp because it's Life and it's Look, but the glue or whatever it was, it seems to not keep these books very well preserved.
yeah.
And the reason why I want to give you some of it, because I'm cutting them up. Like I'm cutting them up because of...
Oh, yeah, I love cut-ups.
Yeah.
Cutouts or whatever.
But they have a lot of fashion articles.
Oh,
and it's
cool.
like, I look at it and I'm like, wow, this is so cool because it's from 1963 and 1964.
Which is like my favorite era for fashion.
And I'll bring them to you eventually, but really cool stuff in there. But again, the quality of it, even though those were high quality, I guess, Life and Look, they don't last that long. So I hope if you're getting bookworms, you keep it nice. But again, I'm okay if it gets ratty, it gets coffee stains or something like that. If that's your type of reading, like we create this book because we want you to devour it. So
Yeah.
I just don't want you to throw it out.
And doodle on it or whatever.
Because there's games in it and there's the word search that I expect, but you don't have to, unless you're a collector like me. I try to keep things nice. The idea is devour it, but don't throw it out.
Also it's so cheap. You could buy 2 copies.
Yeah.
Devour one and then keep the other in a pristine sheet.
Now you sound like me. I literally have. I remember when the Star Wars. So, being a Star Wars kid growing up from like 1985, 86 to mid 90s, it was like this desert of Star Wars stuff. Now you can't think about that now because everything is out there Star Wars now. But there was a time where there was nothing being produced with the Star Wars name on it. And then being in my early 20s, they released new Star Wars figures for the first time in like over 10 years or something.
Oh, I think I remember that.
And I went out and I would buy one to open and one to keep nice.
Wow.
The sad part is every other kid who grew up Star Wars did the same thing. So they have no value now.
This friend of mine, and actually we kind of had a big falling out. It has nothing to do with the book, but made me wonder. But he gave me this old book. And I remember, this was years ago, I was riding on the train from New York to Trenton, and I opened the book and it had the glue on the spine, and the glue, like it opened, like, you know how the front cover kind of detaches.
Yeah.
So the spine is exposed.
Yep.
It did that. And a piece of that glue flew into my eye, like a little kernel of the dried glue.
Yeah.
And okay. So it flew into my eye. Well, I ended up at Will's Eye Hospital with a scratched cornea.
Oh.
And it was an absolute nightmare. So I'm a little cautious whenever I open an old book for that reason. So I thought, well, maybe this book is haunted.
Now I'm happy I wear glasses because I open old books all the time.
Yeah, be careful. Anyway, so I was thinking about this topic of crossover artwork, whether you well, first of all, I do that, and I know you do that too. Like you mentioned fashion. I'm very interested in fashion. I love doing fashion sketches. I've done fashion design. That's certainly different from writing books. I've combined the two with my book, Fashion Victims.
Mm-hmm.
But I was telling you earlier, I'm working on trying to get my new novel finished, and all I want to do right now is draw. Like, because whatever the part of the brain that I'm using to write is very tired, and I don't know if it's a different part of the brain, probably is. I yearn to go into just some simple, relaxing drawings or playing guitar or doing something that has nothing to do with words.
Now, do you feel that doing that hurts the creativity of the writing because you're taking away this is, I don't believe that, I guess there's a limit on creativity. Like your well won't run dry. But do you feel like if you do the creativity, that's your side thing, that you won't have the creative juice to write? Or do you think it helps build more creative juices to get into writing?
Well, it can definitely be a distraction from the work you set out to do, but it can also inform what you're doing. Like I sent you that Clive Barker video from, it was quite a long time ago, showing him in his studio in Beverly Hills. I mean, can you imagine his house? Doing artwork. But through the artwork, he came into his series. So the artwork, just doing the painting, informed Abarat, I think he mentioned. And then he created the characters through doing the artwork. So I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, you can, and I know feed one.
Right, one feeds into the other. And he's a self-taught artist who didn't start painting until he was middle-aged. And he's doing it. I'm watching that video thinking, wow, first of all, I love him. He's in total freedom. Like you can tell he's just in that space of nirvana. He's just so into it. And one thing that he said in the video, I jotted down, was that he's getting out of his own way. So I think that sometimes when we're working, like me trying to reach a deadline about my book, I'm getting in my own way a bit because I'm worrying and I'm second guessing. And if I were just to start sketching, I wouldn't care. I'd be out of my own way. I wouldn't be worrying. I wouldn't fuss and fret over any kind of imperfection. So I think that they work together. And I know like plenty of artists, like I was thinking actors is a good example. Acting, of course, is an art, but I think being an actor can be frustrating because you're dependent on, unless you put your own project together, you're dependent on someone giving you a job. So when you're between jobs, what do? If you want to still be creative. So a lot of artists, and a lot of actors, maybe they're not that great, but some are pretty good, will paint. Like David Bowie, he's not an actor, he's a musician, but he painted. I'm trying to think of other Tony Curtis did all kinds of painting. And then especially as people's lives changed and maybe the roles aren't coming in, they have something to do with their creativity. And sometimes like I find out an actor is a painter or a writer, like Steve Martin also writes novels.
Yeah.
It's a surprise. It's like, oh, I didn't know they did that. That's cool. I read years ago Gloria Swanson's autobiography, which is very good. And I didn't realize she was this incredible sculptor or sculptress. I don't know. I guess it's just sculptor.
Yeah, I don't think.
People don't do that anymore with a.
Well, and I don't know if that was it ever. I mean, you're a sculptor. I don't know if it matters whether you're.
Well, now they don't even say actress anymore. They say actor.
Right.
Either sex, but yeah. So I think it's very cool. I think it can be. I don't think there's anything that will hurt my writing except the time that I'm taking away from writing, if that makes sense. Like I don't think doing any kind of sketching or playing music or writing songs is going to hurt my novel writing. I think it's only going to clear out some cobwebs, or I don't know. I think of creativity as being a well, and hopefully never dries up. But yeah.
The reason why I asked that question is because you used the word distraction, and the biggest like killer of creativity is being distracted. It's really not a distraction for you if you're doing it just because you're writing and now you want to do this, but you have a deadline. It could become a place where it's like, I'm going to sketch because I want to be distracted from the work I have to do.
But I'm not sketching, but I keep fantasizing. As soon as this damn book is done, I'm going to spend a week just sketching.
Right. But you're being disciplined. But I'm just bringing that up. Like, if you are trying to meet a deadline, you need to still be disciplined. There's nothing wrong with saying I'm going to sketch. Like, you can sketch, Regina. You just need to say I'm going to sketch after I've finished my writing for today.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. But I also think, when you're younger, I don't know if you went through this, but I went through this. It's like, oh, I want to be an actor, and then it gets harder. I think I might start painting again.
Oh, I do that. I've done that my whole life. And you know what's funny about that? That's why I have so many skills. So I would be playing music, and then I'd get so aggravated with it, and I'd start drawing. And I've been drawing my whole life, but I've drawn when my dad's a really good artist. So I've always had with him, he's always been like, let's draw or paint or whatever. We've done a lot of that. I would always move to another project because something got hard,
Yeah. So you have to be careful with that, I suppose. I have a friend who does a lot like me and you. Like she's an artist, she's a musician, she does all these different things, and then she started filmmaking, and now she's able to combine all those things.
When I went to film school, that was the reason, was because I was in music. The band broke up, and then I was like, what am I going to do? And somebody asked me, what would you do? Like, if you could go to school? I said, go to film school. And then I realized, like, wow, everything I like, film helps. So it has the writing part. It has the drawing part when you get into storyboarding. For you, it had the fashion stuff going on.
Yeah, I storyboarded too. I still have all my storyboards from that project.
What I didn't like, realizing after the fact, is it's a lot of long, boring days. Like it's more romantic in my head to make a film than the actual reality of it.
But I think we have a film in us.
I actually was thinking about the musical today. I think we need to work on a musical, the rock opera thing or something.
Oh yeah, I have ideas.
But yeah, now here's the other thing. When you first brought this up, I mean, I was up driving my son early, so I get this thing that what you said, and I was half asleep. But my first thought was, people are shocked, like you said, oh, I didn't know they did that. But for some reason, we only allow people to have one skill. If somebody's good at something, we don't think they probably should be good at anything else. And I think that's silly. Like, I always hated, when I grew up, I was a bass player. That was my first thing. Like, I identified as a bass player, and I played bass. No one would accept that I could play guitar. You had to be a bass player,
Yeah.
And I always found that weird. People were like, you are a bass player, you can't pick up that guitar and play it because you're not allowed. You're a bass player. And then when I did pick up the guitar and I started writing, because I wrote music on the guitar, I didn't write on the bass. Like, there might have been a bass line. I wrote bass lines, but I wrote the songs on a guitar or a piano, right?
But was that just like, bass player was your place in your band? So
no, just in the world. Just like,
in the world.
Like,
okay.
my small world that existed. I learned bass. I played bass. I was a bass player, like, up until, like, through high school. And I'm talking maybe high school people, but that's what I was. So, like, I couldn't say I could play guitar. I could, but people were like, oh, you're a bass player though. But when I started writing songs, I had started in the band. I was a guitar player in the band. So then they're like, oh, you're the guitar player. And like, nobody thinks of me as a bass player anymore because they didn't know me as a bass player. I was writing songs and playing in a band as a guitarist. Right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, now you're that. And it's like, you can't then say, oh, I can draw. You'd have to show them, but then they'll be like, oh. Like,
but you're not the one who draws. Yeah.
I hate it too when people you draw, oh, you can draw? Or are you an artist? Like,
yeah.
it's just like they have to put you in a box.
Do you think that's more of an American thing?
I don't know. I've never been anywhere else. But
okay. Well, I haven't really. I mean, I have.
We have a lot of people who listen in the UK and other parts of the world.
Yeah,
so,
let us know.
Yeah, let us know if you think that's just an American thing, because we are jerks in a lot of ways. We do that kind of stuff to each other.
We do. But that is a good thing. And it used to frustrate me because I would get that, well, jack of all trades, master of none. It's like, yeah, but I want to draw or I want to make a film. I don't care. Like why should we let that hold us back? Like who really, getting back to our nobody cares.
Yeah.
You have to be careful of other people's opinions. They really don't matter.
Yeah, because they want to put you in that box, and there is no box, You do whatever you want. And it doesn't mean you have to be a jack of all trades, master of none. You can be a jack of all trades and master of many.
True. And I've gotten put into the costume designer box, but that's just something I picked up along the way. I mean, maybe I'm good at it, but it's not like my passion. I don't know. My passions change perhaps, but I really have been focusing on the writing now for about 10 years and really putting out a lot of material. With costumes. I just kind of, yeah, I'm good at it. I help out, but it doesn't keep me up at night. Let's put it that way.
But I think there's something in people's minds. I don't know if this is an American thing, but when I hear Keanu Reeves has a band and he plays bass, it's like, well, it can't be a good band, right? Nobody thinks like Dog Star is the thing that makes Keanu Reeves. It's like, no, he's an actor and he does this thing with the band, but the only reason you're going to see this band is because it's Keanu Reeves. Like, is Johnny, I mean, I know, Johnny Depp plays music.
Yeah, Johnny Depp plays music. I think he started out as a...
yes, that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah, but like when he
was just too good looking.
Yeah. But now he looks like Keith Richards, so it's okay.
I'm sure he would love to look like Keith Richards. He idolizes him.
Wasn't that his inspiration for his Jack Sparrow character?
And then they actually had Keith Richards play his dad in a future Pirates movie.
Yeah. But he, when he's, I don't know if he's a good musician or not, but I remember seeing like clips of him playing, and people were like, "Oh, what a poser,"
Yeah, because it's not something we can accept that somebody could be good at more than one thing. You got to be pick your lane, stay in your lane.
Yeah, there is a stay in your lane kind of attitude.
And I hate that. I just find that silly.
Too. I think we need to rebel against that. I mean, people can, say, "Oh, you're a dilettante." It's like, okay, I'll accept that. Like, it doesn't matter. Maybe almost every creative person I know, and I know a lot of creative people, do more than one thing. Like my husband, Joe, he's an artist and a musician. Greg McGarvey, another great musician, a friend of mine, artist, and a really good visual artist. Like, I mean, a musician, but he also does like amazing like photography. Righteous Jolly, great actor and musician, songwriter. A lot of people do more than one. And maybe it's what you become. If you become famous, it's what you get known for that puts you in the box, or what you can make money at too. I think that's also really important. And this I know is an American thing. You're not legit unless you make money.
Yeah. But I don't think it's like, I do agree, like, if you're famous, they don't want you to do more than one thing, stay in your lane. But I think it's also with people, too.
Well, I was thinking about Johnny Depp. I know he played with Jeff Beck, like toured with Jeff Beck before Jeff Beck died. And perhaps he's definitely not on that level. Maybe he's not good enough but who cares? He's Johnny Depp. He's going to bring people to that gig who wouldn't have gone because he's a famous actor.
I guess my point is he could be at that level. Like maybe. We just assume he's Johnny Depp and he can't be at that level, but we don't know. Like, I'm sure he isn't. Well,
very, very few guitar players were at that level. Let's be honest.
I'm just saying that I think it's interesting that people find it hard to accept what they call multi-passionates. I don't know if you ever heard that.
Oh, okay.
But
I like that.
It's called that you are a multi-passionate. You have many passions, and you can excel at more than one, but you're not committed, like not necessarily committed, but you're not necessarily just one thing. And I was bringing up the photography. I wanted to learn how to take photos with film, develop the negatives, print the actual photo in a darkroom, and I did that. I loved doing it, but I don't do that anymore. I taught myself how to do it. I enjoyed that process. I have some photos I'm really proud of, and now I'm done with it.
Yeah, I think isn't that what a polymath is too?
Yes.
So we have a word for it. But yeah, I mean, maybe you just wanted to learn photography. I mean, I'm interested in photography. I enjoy it, but it's not. I took a photography class at Bucks and a digital photography class, and I had a great time with it. Like now I know a lot more about photography from taking that class. I don't have to be a professional photographer. I can just dip into that if I want, just like anything. I think that there is a pressure to just choose one and be an expert at that.
Yes.
Well, not everyone's built that way.
And here's the thing, and I think you might agree, that going into these different mediums will help you in whatever other medium you're working in. So you could actually, with your photography, if you have to write something about a guy who's a photographer, now you have that kind of background and knowledge that would help influence that character when you're writing about
true.
it. Or if
That's true.
Or if you're painting, you have an understanding of depth of field in photography, and you can apply that to your painting to blur the background for a reason. So everything influences the other. So I don't think, and especially like we said earlier, if you get into filmmaking, all that stuff matters. Using a film camera is no different than using a still camera, except that things are moving in front of you instead of staying still.
Yes, I think it really helps your visual skills because you have to be able to think abstractly when you're writing to create a scene. Like I was just creating a basement scene just this morning, and I could see it in my head what it looks like. Now I've got to find the words to describe it.
Yep.
I think my interest in film and my own filmmaking, my doing photography, whatever, my painting, I'm thinking about color, I'm thinking about tone. It's all informing the writing process. And it's like, wow, I wish I could paint that scene. And I'd have to find the words to describe it. But there's so much overlap. I don't think we should limit ourselves.
If you are not famous, then absolutely explore other things, because I couldn't live any other way. We talked about this before, and it's so funny. Somebody responded on YouTube about, remember the conversation we had about being a trash man or the plumber?
Yeah.
And that person was like, I just literally had that conversation the other day about being the trash man.
Okay.
And
I'm not alone.
No. But I also felt, I have the feeling like I wish I was. I don't know if I wish I was, but I always kind of was disappointed that I wasn't so obsessed with one thing.
Yes.
Artistically.
I've had that conversation with myself many times, that I've learned to let it go as I got older.
Yeah,
but
me too.
I used to be like, why can't I be satisfied just being an actor? Why am I like drawn to buying art supplies and
Well, buying art supplies is fun, even if you can't draw. I don't know why.
Oh God, it's one of my favorite things.
Right? I love Michael's. I was just there because now I'm getting into more like inking, and I just got some nibs. I got an inking holder pen thing, and
oh, cool. Yeah, getting the equipment is the best part.
It's so weird, but it is
any new hobby.
Yeah, even with musicians, the gear is is so fun. But
I know, but I guess that could be like, the trap is, oh, you're just interested in the gear, and then you're like a little kid who loses interest when it gets hard. But who cares? Those are all those we talked about before, those internal monologues, that harpy speak that you need to shut off, because no one really cares if you're going to study photography and you're, part-time or whatever you want to do. Like some people are really into yarn and, knitting and things like that. It's just what you're drawn to.
Yeah. And I think it's also part of the human experience is to create. And so I don't think you have a choice because we need to create. You find whatever that is in whatever moment that is. And it is true. Like, I think we need to create, but I don't think we need to create for work. And I think once it becomes work, that's why people move to something else, because it's like, hey, my soul needs to create, but
yes,
it doesn't want to make it a job.
Well, I think that's what, if you watch that video, we should put it in the show notes, the Clive Barker video. The quality isn't great, but you get the idea. But he was talking about giving himself permission to make mistakes. Like he said, it has a bunch of paintings that didn't work. And he's like, yeah, it's a little disappointing, but then I started on something and something does work. And he's just acknowledging the messiness of creativity and the pressure we put ourselves under about like, oh, this has to be the greatest thing I've ever done. And, it's got to be right. That can really be hard on creativity. I think that why we're desiring to do something else is to get back to the sandbox mentality of playing and having fun and being free with it. And he was saying about his paintings, about the imperfection of it gives it energy. And I love that.
I also feel that way when I look at bookworms and the influences behind bookworms, like the original zines. The thing that's so beautiful about the zines from the 70s, the 80s, or any time is the imperfection.
I agree. And remember, we were like going to really go off the rails and we're like, we need to buy an old mimeograph
Oh my
machine.
God, yes. Still not a bad idea.
I know it's not a bad idea. And like, if we call up some old schools,
yep.
Like, there's got to be one in a school somewhere.
Plus we get to sniff the fumes.
We get to sniff the fumes. And how fun is that? Because when I find an old like poetry book, a stapled together,
yep,
with a mimeograph, and the scent is still there, it's great.
It is, and there's beauty in that imperfection, especially when we live in a world today where that's so rare to see stuff like that. If you're doing creativity and it is your work, the nice thing about going to the side, and maybe if you're a writer and painting, is that it's teaching you those lessons that Clive Barker is talking about how can I apply this I don't care attitude when you're painting to my writing? How can you take the lessons you're learning about imperfections in your painting to your writing? That's why I like when I'm doing the sketching now. I had a specific idea for the cartoon I'm doing for the next Bookworms. And it has, whatever it originally was, is not what it is now.
Okay.
And I like it more now.
Give it space to breathe.
Yeah. And that is something that you need to learn, and then you can apply it, because it's so hard to apply those lessons to the thing we do every day that we want to become known for. So as a writer, it's hard to give something room to breathe. You're like, no, it has to be, I have to have this script.
I was telling you the other day, I was struggling with my writing, like trying to push the wrong puzzle piece in, because I was thinking with my head and not my heart, or not my intuition. And then I let it go, and I did something stupid, like scrolled through Twitter, and then, eureka, I got the idea that fit. So it's a balance. I mean, I'm sure I mentioned this on this program before, but one of the best pieces of art advice I ever got that I think could apply to any is I was taking an amazing class at U of Arts, which I believe is closing down. Did you hear about that? That's really sad. I took a few graduate classes there when I was teaching, and one I took had nothing to do with my subject, which I was teaching, which was English, or theater, but was drawing and sculpting.
Oh yeah.
And I had a great teacher. I forget his name, but he was one of the best teachers there. It was such a great class, and I learned a lot. But one thing I remember him saying, not just to me, but in general to the class, is don't try to or don't try to draw a pretty picture. Just try to figure it out. And that I loved, because I really got that sense watching Clive Barker that he's just trying to work out whatever it is that's flowing through him and try to put it on the canvas, and it's going to be imperfect. Like Clive Barker, like I love his work, but you can tell his anatomy isn't perfect. Like, he's not painting like a realistic picture, that the eyes don't match, and maybe the placement is a little off, but his natural talent is there, and he's creating something different. And I think trying to figure it out, like do the best you can. And that applies to writing too. It's like, I have got to write, I have a scene. I'm going to try to figure out what's happening here and write that down, instead of I've got to get from point A to point B, go, you know?
And that's what I'm saying. Like I find it difficult writing and having that loose, try to figure it out feeling, because I beat myself up, because writing takes a long time, and I'll be writing it and I'll be like, I know, logically I'm trying to figure it out, but that gives me a lot of time to curse myself. Right.
Yeah.
And when I was drawing though, I was okay with trying to figure it out and trying to figure out what the comic is supposed to be. And now I can take that lesson and apply it to any art, like you're saying. That's a great lesson. Try to figure it out.
Such a great lesson. And it doesn't mean that skill is not involved in all of this work. It definitely, like, skill comes from working on it. Like if I just dedicated myself just to, let's say, drawing, I'm sure I'd be pretty skilled right now than if I had been more, I'm a little more scattershot than that. But I've made peace with that. But every art form does require some skill, and you learn it by doing it and trying to figure it out. Like there are rules in photography about light and exposure and things like this. These are all, and focus and depth of field and all these different things that you learn. You have to, if you really want to get good at something, you do have to work on it. So we're not saying you just do anything, but
we're talking about side projects. I think
we are.
I think,
but I'm saying it's okay not to be great at something, I guess is my point.
Yeah.
And to just enjoy.
That's the side project. I thought if you want to be good at your art that you want to sell or you want to get out there, you still have to work hard. But what I'm saying is, we're not saying not to do that, but I'm saying, like, if you decide to do something on the side, it gives you the freedom to learn what creativity is really about. And then you apply that to whatever it is you're trying to do, like write a novel.
Right.
Because they're not different. It's not different. The rules still, with creativity.
Yeah, there's still rules. But like sometimes, like I read James Franco's novel. I forget what it's called. Actor's Nightmare, maybe. And I got it out of the library. It wasn't very good. And I do like him as an actor. But, I kind of see what he was trying to do. He wrote, maybe he just kind of got some stuff off his chest and wrote a novel. It wasn't that memorable, but he wrote it. And I don't think he had a ghostwriter. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah. The one person I want to talk about who I didn't know did this, but I'm not surprised, is Tom Savini, who is the monster movie makeup guru.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And, he's did like Friday the 13th and the zombie stuff, everything. But he's on Instagram. If you want to find Tom Savini on Instagram, he's been painting these big paintings recently, and he's revealing the paintings. And they're all like, currently the ones he's doing is like Universal monsters, like Wolfman and Frankenstein. That monster makeup stuff, that is all art. So I'm not surprised that he's doing this, but that's what he's doing now.
Yeah.
And also sculpture, when you did drawing and sculpture, I think if you want to draw, get into sculpture as well, because sculpture makes you see everything in 3D. And then once you have that in your brain, you're now be able to draw and think of it as 3D when you're drawing it, and it won't be as flat.
Yep. Yeah, it totally changed the way I saw things.
Yes.
And that is also really important. It's training your eye that's why we love good films, and the more you watch great movies, it's like you start to see things. It's not just you're not just responding to the story and the acting, but you're seeing the visuals and starting to kind of take mental notes, or else you're just absorbed in the story. But if you go back and study the film, then you can see what the cinematographer is doing, and it is photography. It's not just, oh, we'd have to record this.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and also it's all, I would say, drawing, painting, photography, film,
dance. We left
well,
out.
no,
dance.
I will get to dance, but I'm saying the things I just mentioned is more about light.
Yes.
Visual arts is about light, and you learn that only by doing multiple ones and understanding that when you understand light
And line, and there's all different aspects.
but light is so important. I hate it when an Apple does this, but they'll say, look at this film that was shot on an iPhone. You can make any really bad camera beautiful if you use lighting correctly.
Yes, if you could do like Rembrandt lighting.
If you understand lighting, you can get a beautiful film. If you understand lighting, you could have a not so great camera, right, and make a beautiful film with great lighting, or you could have a very, very expensive red camera with bad lighting, and it will look bad. So it's not the camera so much as the. Well, this is something. When I was going through photography, everybody who's a photographer hates, and this is the same. They hate when they ask you, "Hey, what camera are you using?"
Oh,
because it's like, no, I could be using a cheap Polaroid and get a great photo if I'm a good photographer and I understand light and shadow and line, like you said. Or I could have a very expensive camera and know nothing and make really shitty. It's not the camera.
No, would you know the photographer? He's from New Hope, Bob Christ.
Yes. I don't know him, like I can't picture anything, but I know the name.
He did a presentation at my studio a few years ago. I met him when we were both on the jury for a film festival of high school students at New Hope Soulbury. So this is how I know him. But he did a presentation, and it was fun. And he's an older man now. He was a National Geographic photographer. I mean, a renowned real photographer, professional. And he didn't talk at all about any equipment. All he said was, when he was asked, what are your secrets to your great photos? And he's like, I shoot in magic hour, basically.
Yeah.
Early in the morning or late in the afternoon, because that does something with the light.
Yeah,
that
the
makes it
lighting's beautiful.
And and that was his advice. I'm sure he knows, a lot of other techniques and stuff, but I think we were talking about gearheads. It's kind of like when you get too much into the gear and not enough into the actual what you're doing.
Yeah.
You get just something to, basically, like we've talked about this before. If you're thinking about, I can't start writing until I can afford that Scrivener program or something. It's like, no, you can really start with a yellow legal pad and a pen.
Yeah. People were writing a long time, great things, into stone. So.
Yeah. And, Clive Barker does freehand writing. I don't know if you know that.
And canceled Neil Gaiman too.
50 Shades of Gaiman.
Oh, that's so good.
Oh my God. Talk about distractions. That was like my big distraction last week from writing was what's going on with this Neil Gaiman story.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, let's wrap it up. I think if you are not doing something other than your main craft, maybe look into something that you've been dying to do. Maybe you want to learn to play the guitar, do some drawing, dance. Like we brought up, dance is that's the one thing I wish I would never. The other thing you got to realize is you don't have a lot of time in this life. So, choose wisely.
We could always put on a record and dance.
Yeah, dance is, but I mean, I always think like if I ever wanted to learn how to do really good dance, like not just dance like no one's watching.
Right.
But I also know, you know what? It's not a desire strong enough for me to say I'm going to take away from other things.
Yes, I've had that. Like, yeah, I was watching. I know nothing about hip hop music, but I was watching like these kids doing this dance, and I was like, wow, that'd be really cool to learn that. But I'm not gonna,
Right.
put the effort into taking the class. But
Yeah.
I admire it from afar.
Yeah. So if you have another art that you work on, keep it up.
Keep it up.
Whatever lessons you're learning, bring them to your other craft that you feel like is your main craft, if you have that thought.
And don't shame yourself for wanting to do something else.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's normal. And also, if you aren't doing it because you think that you are a writer, I'm not a painter. You can't believe, like, I teach a lot of stuff, and everyone who comes in and says, I can't draw a straight line, or, yeah, I don't know how to play anything. But they want to. Like, people want to do some of these things, but they're just thinking in their head, it's not who I am. And that is just a limiting belief.
Yes. Now I'm looking. We're doing this video, and your profile picture was that a self portrait? Because that has really good lighting in it.
Oh, so that's an act, not a self portrait. So that's my friend Tony, and he is into filmmaking, but he was started with photography, and he did a project of everybody he knew. He would invite them over to his studio and take the photo, and that was mine. Oops.
Oh,
that's my photo. He has a lot of good photos he did. Tony Willis, and he is a great artist. And that picture I've been using since he took it because I liked it.
Yeah, it's very good.
Do whatever it is you want to do. Enjoy it. Learn from it. And
don't judge yourself.
Yeah. And that's, again, I think if you do something on the side, you probably will find yourself not judging yourself as much versus what you're doing. And why is that? Like, stop and think, or write journal when you're doing this and saying, hey, I drew this today, and I saw some. You also will see progress when you're starting something new that helps you. And my belief is creativity doesn't matter what you're doing. It's the same process. And I like to think about sculpture, because sculpture is a big block of marble. And they say, what you're really doing is taking away everything that isn't the sculpture.
Right. Releasing it from the prison of the rock.
And like when you're writing, you can think of it the same way. You write like that first draft, and then you start to take away everything that is not the book.
And also, Michelangelo did sculpture, painting, and he also wrote poetry.
Yeah, and Leonardo too. That. But, every time you read something, it's like, well, not everybody can be Mozart. Not everybody can be Michelangelo.
Well, that's true, but that's not really what we're talking about.
Yeah, but they did do multiple things, and multiple things well. You may be a Michelangelo and you don't know it. You're letting someone tell you that you're only this one thing.
That's a very good point.
Right, and that's not necessarily the case. When we see with the famous people is that they do these other things because their one thing became their job. Mm-hmm. And it might not feel as it did when they started, They might
hate it because it's their job.
Yeah, yeah. You work so hard on something that it becomes your job, and then you're like, well, I want to just create and be free. So they go paint, or they get in a band, Mm-hmm. So,
how cool is that, just to be like, oh, you know what? I think I might just be in a band for a year. Just do it.
Yeah, that's the other thing. When I was in a band when I was younger, there was a goal, write your songs, play the clubs, get into bigger clubs, keep getting bigger and bigger. Now, if I'm in a band, it's just to write, or not even to write, just to play music with friends. And
right. And well, maybe the idea is we need to make work be more fun.
What do you mean?
Well, like when you were in a band young, it was a lot of pressure on you and your bandmates because it was work.
Yeah.
Like, we got to do this, we got to work with it. And if it just would be like, oh, let's just have fun with this gig tonight.
We brought that up last week, I think.
It would have been better. Yeah, we did. We did talk about that.
I agree. Try to have fun. If it's not fun, why you're doing it, really? If it's not fun, why do it?
Yeah, is that a cliche? Have more fun. It is a cliche, but it's true.
Well, I will say it's awful at my job. They were like, "What's the most important thing? Have fun." Well, then I'm gonna have fun. I'm going home. You know, like don't bring that up. I hate that. I hate that, and I hate we're a family shit. We're not a family.
I know. Those are just like buzzwords, and they lose their meaning. It's like I remember, just to add maybe to last kind of thought about this. My last story, there was a highly progressive school in New York that was like, we're going to just let the kids decide when they want to learn science, let's say. And in the meantime, they can like ride skateboards around the hall. They could do whatever. Well, you can kind of figure out what ended up happening.
Yeah.
They were completely happy just to ride skateboards around the hall and to chill. And they didn't really wander into the science lab too much because they were having fun. So, you know, you have to understand what that means. Like, yeah, have fun with the task that you're on. But it doesn't mean it's like, you know, I think I'm just going to have fun. I'm going to throw my novel away and just go ride my skateboard.
Right.
I mean, you could, but, you know, not if you want to finish your book.
Yeah, you have to be disciplined like Regina's going to do as soon as she gets off here and work on her book.
Yep.
All right.
But this has been a fun break from that.
Yeah, so check out the links. I'll put the links in the show notes. Go buy Bookworms Horror Zine, and we'll be back next week with a new episode.
All right, sounds great.
All right, bye.
Bye.